So, welcome to LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've got about 20 clips for you on a bunch of different topics for what should be a good show tonight. As always, this is my weekly broadcast of the best clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the corporate media here in the United States, along with my commentary between the clips, and then I'll take your live comments after I get through showing the clips. And I hope you notice it seems to be the old comment system on my live events and also when they're recorded videos, so check out the old YouTube comment system. I'll also be using, this week in addition to the Sunday news shows from the regular big five outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News. I'll also be using some quasi-news clips from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, as usual, and also last night's Saturday Night Live on NBC. The several topics I'll be covering tonight include Iran and China and the 60 Minutes fake Benghazi story and the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And, of course, I'll mostly be focusing on the continuing Obamacare controversy, with President Obama coming out for an hour to talk to the press this week about allowing more people to keep insurance plans that they like. You know, if they like their plans, they can keep them. And that got a lot of coverage, and also Bill Maher reacted to him increasing the number of plans that people could keep in the first clip I'm going to show you from HBO's Real Time here.
The change Obama announced yesterday was to the people who have crummy, crappy, shitty plans and want to keep them, what I call hospital gown policies, because plainly your ass is not covered. Okay. The thing is, Obamacare was trying to protect these people who are being ripped off by insurance companies. But yesterday, Obama said, okay, finally, you know what? You want your shitty, crummy plans? You can have them. You want your policy where you go in for an operation and you're covered for when they cut you open, but not when they sew you up? Fine, children. Have your broken piece of glass that you want to play with. And one reason he had to do this was that Bill Clinton opened his big, fat, vegan mouth and said Obama should let people keep their crappy insurance even if it screwed up the whole system. You know what? If you're a Democrat, the Clintons are a pre-existing condition.
So that same point about the Clintons turning on Obamacare showed up in this great Saturday Night Live commercial parody about Obama reaching a low point in his presidency, and I'm going to show you that clip over here.
Then you may be suffering from presidential depression. It feels like even your friends have turned against you.
The enrollment period, it was a disaster.
And it's beginning to affect your work. Ask your doctor for Paxil, second-term strength. The only antidepressant strong enough for an embattled second term. So you can get back on your feet and start running the country again. With Paxil, you'll feel like you're giving a speech at a college campus in 2008.
So yeah, that was Saturday Night Live, right, giving the Obama presidency its low point so far that it is so far depressed that it has to take Paxil, I guess. And I put a link to the entire Saturday Night Live episode down in the video description if you want to take a look at it. I thought, and that whole commercial parody was kind of funny. It even took a little dig at the Tea Party at the end. But President Obama has definitely taken a lot of hits. His poll numbers on his honesty are at an all-time low, and his approval ratings are very low. There's been a lot of talk, and I'm not showing all the pundits who are talking about this being Obama's Katrina or his Iraq war, but there are a lot of people saying that he has problems with his honesty or with people believing his honesty, and that's basically, even though, you know, I talked last week about how President Obama's promise, if you like your health care, you can keep it, was actually pretty much in the law. There's this grandfather clause that said for people who own policies up until the passage of Obamacare, the minimum requirements of Obamacare didn't stop them from having those plans, but that didn't stop just about everyone in the media, not just like Fox News and the right-wing media, from saying that Obama broke a promise. And I want to show you here over on ABC, you can see This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Jonathan Karl, in his intro piece, talked about how Obama broke his promise, and I want to show you that here.
You like your plan.
And the president's repeated vow that Americans could keep their health care if they liked it, with millions getting cancellation notices, President Obama acknowledged a broken promise.
There is no doubt that the way I put that forward unequivocally ended up not being accurate.
But his
Now, that is not exactly what President Obama said in his press conference earlier this week, and I'm actually going to show you a clip of that press conference in a minute. But I also want to show you, that was ABC this week with George Stephanopoulos. I also want to show you how over on NBC, everyone says NBC and MSNBC are so pro-Obama, and I'll show you over on NBC, David Gregory had Democratic Minority Leader from the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, on, and she made a similar promise to what President Obama promised about how if you like your health care, you can keep it. And David Gregory called her on it, and she gave a pretty good defense regarding the grandfather clause that I haven't seen, like I said last week, in a lot of places in the media. Anyway, I'll show you that clip from David Gregory and Nancy Pelosi from Meet the Press on NBC here.
This is what you said back in June of 2009 on MSNBC. Watch.
What we are talking about is affordable, quality, accessible health care for all Americans. It's about choice. If you like what you have and you want to keep it, you have the choice to do that.
Are you accountable for saying something that turned out not to be correct?
Well, it's not that it's not correct. It's that if you want to keep it, and it's important for the insurance company to say to people, this is what your plan does. It doesn't prevent you from being discriminated against on the basis of pre-existing conditions. It doesn't lifetime limits, annual limits, and the rest of that.
There's a bottom line to this, which I think people understand and the president has acknowledged, which is if there are not, the government is deciding there have to be minimum standards that are minimum requirements in any healthcare plan.
Yeah.
So if you have something and you like it and it doesn't meet what the government says you have to have, you cannot keep it. And that's not what you said
If you had your plan before the enactment of the law in 2010, if you had your plan before, there is nothing in the law that says you have to. But, again, we can go back and forth on this.
Right, but this is an important deal because the grandfathering has changed. And the bottom line is the president has acknowledged, it doesn't seem like you're acknowledging, that saying to people back in 2009, hey, this is going to be easy. If you like what you have, you can keep it. This is all about choice.
You could, if you had your plan until the enactment of the law in 2000. The grandfathering is for those before 2000. But let me say this, and I commend the president. He's gracious and he's taking responsibility. But that doesn't mean that there was anything in the law that said if you like what you had before 2010, you couldn't keep it. I think it's really important to make that point. He took responsibility for the big picture, and that's important for him to do because that's what people see. But there is nothing. But you said earlier, if the law says that you must be can't, the law doesn't say that. But.
And yeah, that's the grandfather clause. The section 1251 of the Affordable Care Act that I showed last week does say that people who had health insurance before the law was passed don't have to, their insurers don't have to change the insurance to meet any requirements of Obamacare. So they were grandfathered in. And I think David Gregory was trying to say to Nancy Pelosi that President Obama had apologized for breaking a promise. Why couldn't you apologize? But that's not really what President Obama said, and I want to show you the key part of how President Obama explained how he didn't lie, although his promise the way he phrased it may have been too expansive or too non-equivocal. Anyway, I'll show you. Here's a clip from President Obama's press conference earlier this week, and also down in the video description there's a link to the entire press conference you can watch for yourself. But here's the key part, I think, in this clip.
With respect to the pledge I made that if you like your plan, you can keep it. I think, and I've said in interviews that there is no doubt that the way I put that forward unequivocally ended up not being accurate. It was not because of my intention not to deliver on that commitment and that promise. We put a grandfather clause into the law, but it was insufficient. Keep in mind that the individual market accounts for 5% of the population. So when I said you can keep your health care, I'm looking at folks who've got employer-based health care, I'm looking at folks who've got Medicare and Medicaid, and that accounts for the vast majority of Americans. And then for people who don't have any health insurance at all, obviously that didn't apply. My commitment to them was you're going to be able to get affordable health care for the first time. You have an individual market that accounts for about 5% of the population, and our working assumption was, my working assumption was, that the majority of those folks would find better policies at lower costs or the same costs in the marketplaces, and that the universe of folks who potentially would not find a better deal in the marketplaces, the grandfather clause would work sufficiently for them. And it didn't. And again, that's on us, which is why that's on me. And that's why I'm trying to fix it. And as I said earlier, I guess last week, and I will repeat, that's something I deeply regret because it's scary getting a cancellation notice.
So yeah, President Obama there, he felt the pain of those who got the cancellation notices, and he admitted, that's on me, and he didn't really say that he lied because, as I explained last week, I don't think he really lied because of the grandfather clause, Section 1251 in the Affordable Care Act. But he did take responsibility, and throughout that press conference, he said, that's on me. He said, when they talked about the website and the website not being ready, he kept saying how he fumbled, and actually that whole thing about fumbling, he got ridiculed a little by Seth Meyers over on Saturday Night Live last night, and I want to show you that clip kind of quickly here.
President Obama on Thursday admitted that there were flaws in the Affordable Care Act, saying we did fumble the ball, and then the Republicans recovered it, and then we tried to chase after them, and then our pants fell down.
So yeah, that's kind of the ridicule of Obama admitting he fumbled. I guess when politicians admit mistakes and do those mea culpas, they always risk getting ridiculed somewhat, and that's what happened to President Obama. But there was the reason that I think President Obama came out and did that is that the Republicans had this bill set to pass or set for a vote in the House of Representatives on Friday, the Upton bill, and they tried to call it the You Can Keep Your Plan bill, but it actually did quite a bit more than just allow people to keep their plans. It actually kind of gutted Obamacare, and I noticed over on Fox News Sunday they talked about that, but let me see. I'm just loading up the next three here real quick. You can see Chris Wallace talking about how this Upton bill that went through the House kind of gutted Obamacare, but what they were talking about and focusing on over on Fox News Sunday was how 39 Democrats actually voted for it, and I'll talk about that a little more after I show the clip here.
In the House on Friday, 39 Democrats jumped ship and voted with a Republican plan that I think most people feel would, in effect, gut Obamacare. And there's a general estimate that had the president not announced his fix, that more than 100 Democrats would have joined the Republican effort. Here is a clip from a California Democratic freshman who still voted with the Republican plan.
What we have to do is take the things that are working and continue to build off of that. But then we have to be open as a party for those things that aren't working, to be ready to identify them and fix them and make them better.
Now, that congressman there, that's Congressman Bera. He's my congressman. He represents me in Congress. He's a freshman congressman, which means he was just elected in 2012. He actually ran in 2010 and lost. And I have to do a full disclosure here from Open Secrets. If you search my name on Open Secrets, you'll see that in the primary and the general election in both the 2010 cycle and the 2012 cycle, I gave money to Bera. And I actually met with one of his staff members about 10 days ago to talk about immigration issues, not the Affordable Care Act, and lobby on those. But, what Bera is doing there, I don't think it's really supporting the Upton bill so much as What Fox News didn't tell you there is my congressman is in probably what is the most competitive district in the entire United States, or at least one of the top few, because here in California we got rid of political partisan gerrymandering. We have a nonpartisan commission drawing our congressional districts, so we have closer districts, and Bera's district, where he beat Republican Dan Lundgren in 2012, is pretty evenly split. And so he's up for close re-election, and he knows that this "you can keep your plan" bill could be easily demagogued in those 30-second campaign ads. So he doesn't want to vote against it and have a Republican opponent run ads against him. And they say, you know, you can never really get in trouble voting against something that doesn't pass, and this bill's never going to pass because it's never going to make it through the Senate. So he avoids those ads against him for voting against the "you can keep your plan" bill, but doesn't have to suffer the consequences of the bill actually passing. And there are real problems with the bill, and I want to show you Washington Post Ezra Klein was over on Real Time with Bill Maher, and he talked about some of the problems with the Upton bill, and I want to show you that over here.
The bill you're talking about is Fred Upton's bill. That went a bit further. So
who is
look,
Fred Upton now?
Fred Upton is a Republican representative from Michigan. And look, Obamacare not working, it's bad for the president, bad for the Democratic brand, but also bad for the people who need it to work. So let's put that as a premise here.
So Fred Upton wants to help.
The reason
he wants to make the law work. Is that right?
Not quite.
No, okay.
So the reason they didn't like Upton's bill is that in addition to saying you can keep your plan, it also said insurers can sell new plans that completely undermine the bill's consumer regulation. So if you're an insurer, you want to sell a new plan that does not allow sick people into it, you want to continue discriminating against pre-existing conditions. Under Upton, you can do that, and then after that, the law is to treat it as a grandfather
But on the other side of
so that is what killed that bill.
Right, but
it was
the Senate,
a much larger step.
Well, it didn't kill the bill. The House passed the bill.
Well, that's what killed it with Democrats.
With 39 Democrats voting for it.
Yeah.
So, but
So, yeah, there are real problems with the Upton bill. It basically, like even on Fox News, they admitted it guts Obamacare. It would let people not only keep their health insurance if they liked the plan they bought before Obamacare passed, and even if they liked it after Obamacare passed, but it would actually let insurance companies sell these plans that don't meet the requirements of Obamacare to new people who never had the plans before. So it's the old plans can go to new people. It's not even if you like your plan, you can keep it. So it basically would be a way to get rid of the requirements of Obamacare. So I don't think it's really that big a... I mean, it's not really according to... It doesn't follow the title, you can... If you like your plan, you can keep it, or the "you can keep your plan" bill. It's really more of a political exercise, and that's what Nancy Pelosi pointed out to David Gregory over on Meet the Press when he was asking her why it was that all of these Republicans, and I'm just loading up the next 3 clips here. I haven't gotten that new software yet. I apologize for that. But you can see Nancy Pelosi over on Meet the Press responding to David Gregory asking why so many Democrats supported this bill that would have gutted Obamacare, the Upton bill, and she responds that it was pretty much a political thing, and I'll show you that clip here.
Friday, the House passed a GOP plan to allow the renewal of millions of policies required to be canceled under the current law, and also sell similar policies to new customers. The bill goes farther than the president's announced fix, and he has threatened to veto it. 39 Democrats defected and voted with the Republican majority. Joining me now, the leader of the Democrats in the House, Nancy Pelosi. Welcome back to Meet the Press.
Morning.
Good to have you here in studio. There is a crisis of confidence, and the country feels it about Obamacare, but it seems to go deeper. 39 Democrats voting with the Republicans on this bill that doesn't look like it's going to go forward. Has it reached a point where Democrats don't believe the president can pull this off and can make Obamacare work?
No, I remind you that while 39 voted for this resolution the other day, the number has been in the 30s when it was to agree with them on the mandate for businesses, the mandate for individuals. So this is approximately the same number.
But there is some real frustration among your Democratic caucus, fair?
That's true, but you focused on the number, and the number is approximately the same of 2-3 months ago as it is today, when the Republicans put forth a political initiative. People respond to it politically.
But I think the question...
And yeah, that was basically the point I was making with Bera, that it was a political tactic. It was never a bill that was going to pass the Senate or be signed by the president. And so it was a political tactic by the Republicans, and some vulnerable Democrats reacted politically to it, like my representative, Bera, did. And I'm not, completely happy with the way he voted on it, but I can understand it because of the political situation he's in. And I have a few more clips about Obamacare I want to show before I get on to a couple other topics. One has to do with the supposed death spiral that's going to happen if not enough young people sign up. And that's been, I've seen that on Fox News, of course, talked about a lot, but I saw it made it over to ABC this week with George Stephanopoulos. They have their reporter, Rebecca Jarvis, was over on, and she was trying to say that if they don't get enough young people right at the beginning, it's going to cause a big problem in Obamacare, and I want to show you that clip real quickly here.
Years, because ultimately, in order for this to work, and you heard it from John, the insurers need a pool of people that is both young and healthy, as well as the sick and the old. And ultimately, if next year you don't see young people signing up for the exchanges, and right now it doesn't look like they will be, then in 2015, that's when premiums start to go up, because the insurers will say, we spent all of this money in 2014 to insure people, and we need to actually pass those costs along to the other people in the next year.
So yeah, there's Rebecca Jarvis on ABC News saying that if they don't get young people signed up right at the beginning, it's going to cause all the premiums to go up in 2015. But Ezra Klein, who I showed over on HBO's Real Time from last Friday, was also on Meet the Press this morning, and he gave an interesting analysis of why the insurance companies might actually keep those premiums low in 2015, even if not enough young people sign up at the beginning. And I want to show that analysis that I didn't see really anywhere else this morning over in this clip.
Obamacare was begun in its first 3 years with a couple of protections against what we call adverse selection, right? Against too many sick people coming in and not young people coming in. So one thing is this thing called a risk corridor. If they misprice their insurance, right? If they price it too low for the sickness of the people they get, the government will, in years 1, 2, and 3, reimburse them about half the difference. So that's a very big deal. It essentially subsidizes a bad risk pool. The other thing is that, let's say they think in 2014 this thing is just going to be a mess, right? You're going to have exactly the problem with the young people we're talking about here. But by 2015, you've got a tighter individual mandate. You've got the website up and working, because I don't think anybody thinks you can't get this up in a year. Well, all of a sudden, insurers have to make this decision. Do they want to just keep all these sick people they got in the first year, or do they want to price it such that they get the healthy people? And it might make a ton of sense for them to keep premiums low in 2015 in order to get the healthy people, because otherwise they've got the worst of both worlds. They've got a terrible risk pool. So I don't think it's automatic what they do. We just don't know yet.
And yeah, that's a really interesting analysis, that even if they get all the older, sicker people signed up at the beginning, the insurance companies in 2015, they may want to keep their rates low, even if they're losing money at the beginning, because they need to get those young people in, and they don't want to jack up the rate so that they won't sign up because the insurance companies are businesses, and they are also really profitable businesses, so they can afford to take a loss for a while, especially given what Ezra Klein said there at the beginning about how the government's going to subsidize some of those losses if the risk pools don't work out as they hope right at the beginning. So I think the whole death spiral thing that you saw from Rebecca Jarvis there on ABC, and that you hear a lot from the right-wing media, is maybe a little bit overblown. And then there's one more clip on Obamacare I want to show you before I get on to a couple other topics. And this is also from Meet the Press. David Gregory had Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte on, and she's one of the most centrist Republicans. And he asked her a question that I think her answer shows why it is that Democrats aren't going to, the problems with Obamacare aren't going to make healthcare a totally losing issue for Democrats. And that's because the Republicans don't really have much of an alternative. And you can see that from when that was actually what David Gregory asked Kelly Ayotte, what is it that Republicans are proposing as an alternative to Obamacare, and her answer wasn't very convincing, as you can see in this clip.
What is a viable alternative that really solves the problem?
Well, I would say let's get to the table on a bipartisan basis, and let's make sure that we have a plan that has more choice, not less. Let's have one where we're driving down costs and increasing competition. Have the insurance companies compete in a way that they aren't right now. Let's get together and figure out what are the best models from the state law on the high-risk pools to address pre-existing conditions. There are many ideas I think that we could do that won't harm people who have policies now that they would like to keep. And I think that's the problem that we're seeing, is a law that harms so many people who right now we're trying to do the right thing and have health insurance, and now they're receiving these cancellation notices and higher premiums. And it seems to me that we should work together to address this health care reform instead of the way this was done on party lines.
All right.
So yeah, that sounded a lot more like talking points than anything that was really going to be a substantive policy from the Republicans to address the real problems with health care in the United States. And I'm still waiting. One thing that's really interesting, if you check out the Paul Ryan plan, which is really the most substantive plan from conservatives, it has healthcare exchanges in it, which is what Republicans have been spending all this time attacking, is the healthcare exchanges. But there are healthcare exchanges in Republican plans, and of course Obamacare is kind of Romney care put on the federal level. It is kind of a Republican plan. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but I want to go over to another topic. This week, November 22nd, is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas in 1963, and there was a lot of discussion of that all over the Sunday talk shows this morning. In fact, Face the Nation was completely devoted over to the topic of the JFK assassination. I am going to show one clip that I thought was interesting from there, but before I do that, I want to show a couple clips from Fox News Sunday where they're promoting this weird idea that JFK was some kind of conservative, because he's one of the most popular presidents ever. So of course on Fox News and the right-wing conservative echo chamber, they have to find some way to deal with that fact. And so you can see that first over on Fox News Sunday. They had Kathleen Kennedy Townsend and Patrick Kennedy, niece and nephew of JFK, on to talk about him. And you can see Chris Wallace asking Kathleen Kennedy Townsend about this idea of JFK being a conservative over in this clip.
There is a growing body of thought that, in fact, that President Kennedy was quite conservative in some of his policies. He was a fierce Cold Warrior. He believed that tax cuts spur the economy. Kathleen?
Well, as you know, Chris, the tax cuts when I was growing up and when you were growing up were 90% at the tax rates at the marginal rate. So he lowered it to 70%. So one could say 90% to 70% is not down to 22% now. So I think he was a smart guy and balanced, and he realized that we needed to put more money in the hands of the citizens, and that would help spur the economy. And I think he was right about that. He did not like communism, that is for sure. He believed in freedom and liberty a lot, but he also resisted at almost every turn the generals who wanted to go to war. When they wanted, during the Bay of Pigs, when they wanted to bomb, he said no. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the generals wanted to bomb, he said no, because he thought that, as George Kennan had pointed out, that if you have a long twilight struggle in which you could stop communism and then believe in freedom, freedom eventually wins out, which it has.
So yeah, I think Kathleen Kennedy Townsend kind of refuted pretty well the conservative JFK argument. First on the tax thing, that tax rates were really high, so it's not really the same as lowering taxes in the supply side way. And also being anti-communist, that doesn't mean that you're conservative. That was a bipartisan policy, and a lot of liberals were anti-communist. I think a lot of people I see on my channel, since I'm LiberalViewer, I get called a communist and a socialist a lot. I've been in a couple arguments this last week about that, but being liberal doesn't mean being communist, and being liberal actually means being anti-communist. And And then on the whole tax thing, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but not only did Kathleen Kennedy Townsend have to refute that point from Chris Wallace, but after she refuted it, when they got to the panel discussion, of course, Chris Wallace and conservative George Will, who's migrated over from This Week with George Stephanopoulos over to Fox News Sunday in the last few months, where he's now a regular, they still perpetuated this conservative JFK myth, and I'll show you that clip
George,
here.
your thoughts about John F. Kennedy's legacy and this growing notion that he, in fact, espoused a lot of conservative values?
Well, he was a conventional liberal before liberalism changed in the late 1960s. He was a Cold Warrior in the tradition of Harry Truman. And domestically, he hired as his Treasury Secretary C. Douglas Dillon, a Republican from Wall Street, and did indeed believe in supply-side tax cuts, increased revenues from lower rates.
Now, increased revenues from lower rates isn't the same thing as believing in supply side. Supply side didn't even exist at the time of JFK, and there's a great article in Salon, and I put a link to it down in the video description. I'll put the headline, "Stop Calling JFK Conservative, the Right's Favorite New Lies Filled with Historical Flaws." And there's a lot of great links in that article. One to basically JFK giving a speech, Why I'm a Liberal, and where he explained in great detail in a speech why he is a liberal. And on the whole supply side thing, it's kind of what Kathleen Kennedy Townsend was saying, that tax rates were so high, he was lowering rates, but it wasn't tax cuts for the rich, it was tax cuts for the middle class, and that's where you give money to the middle class to spend, not to the rich to invest. And that's not supply side, that's actually demand side, because people who, when you give tax cuts to people who spend, that's creating demand, not supply. So it's not supply side. So what they're saying on Fox News is totally wrong, and I recommend that Salon article to anyone who is worried that JFK is actually some kind of conservative. When, I mean, his big programs are going to the moon, that's a big government program. The Peace Corps, that's like nation building and a government program. And of course civil rights, that's government social engineering, and from a conservative point of view. So the whole thing is just kind of ridiculous. But I wanted to show you those clips. But there's one other JFK clip. As I said, over on Face the Nation, they spent the entire hour talking about the JFK assassination, and there's some interesting tidbits there, but I didn't think it was really like relevant for my Sunday clip roundup. But one thing I thought was relevant was a comment from historian Douglas Brinkley, who talked about the way the JFK assassination changed the media and the whole news experience, and I'll talk about that a little bit after I show the clip here.
In the 50s, you had the Kefauver, hearings being brought on TV. Well, that's just Congress's sausage making, and certainly John Glenn's Triple Orbit started bringing people into special effects television, but bringing a real-life trauma like this hour after hour after hour, with all those poignant moments, including the young Kennedy children there at Arlington National Cemetery, and Jackie Kennedy looking so almost Madonna-like, or almost that every time you see that photo of her with the veil, it's just the most gripping drama. And as you mentioned, after that, Vietnam becomes the television war, and Watergate's brought on TV, and we're all turned into these big events and followed them through. The Kennedy assassination began that.
And yeah, I think that's true, that in the history of TV news media coverage, that the JFK assassination was the nation's first experience with what is now like the 24-hour news cycle. That was the first time people were glued to their sets to watch something happening live that was a real galvanizing event. Although I'm talking from what I've read in my study of history, I do have an undergraduate degree in history, but I was not born at the time of the John F. Kennedy's assassination, so I don't have any first-hand knowledge about that. But anyway, those were the few clips I wanted to show on the JFK assassination. Another thing that happened this last week was the last Sunday there was this 60 Minutes story that kind of confirmed the whole right-wing conspiracy theory on Benghazi. 60 Minutes ran the story, and then after that, it could, you know, all these people in the right-wing media said, see, we've been telling you this for years, and finally someone in the non-right-wing media is confirming what we've been saying, or not for years, but for over a year we've been pounding on this, and finally someone is else other than Fox News and the right-wing echo chamber is covering it. But and then of course the whole thing fell apart. The big witness, the 60 Minutes showed saying that there was, you know, insufficient security and all that stuff. He turned out to be like a con man and a liar. And first I want to show a clip from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. Here's Bill Maher talking about how there's no accountability from the right-wing media. So of course I had to show you this clip right here.
60 Minutes did a whole segment on this guy. He's a con man. His name was Dylan Davies, but he went under the name Morgan Jones. And he told a story about Benghazi and the night the shit went down that was very damning to Obama. And of course, Fox News and the National Review and all the right-wing outlets said, hey, you got to watch this. In fact, there is Jonah Goldberg tweeted, the 60 Minutes Benghazi piece corroborates pretty much everything Fox News has reported so far. It sure does, because it turned out to be total bullshit. My question is, where is the retraction from the National Review and Fox News and all the people who said, watch this, it's going to be great, and it turned out to be a con man?
Well, listen.
So yeah, that's a good question. Where is the retraction? But at least 60 Minutes took a lot of ridicule from it, and I thought there was this great way of satirizing or ridiculing 60 Minutes over on last night's Saturday Night Live, where they took the whole Rob Ford, mayor of Toronto, smoking crack story, and they melded it with the 60 Minutes Benghazi story in the clip you can see right here.
Mayor Rob Ford, patriot, hero, role model. Tonight, he'll tell a side of the story you have to hear to believe. So, Mayor Ford, once and for all, what is the truth?
I have never done crack.
I believe you.
I've also never smoked pot.
I believe you.
And I've never had alcohol?
Mayor Ford, I believe you.
Oh my God, this is the best show!
And of course then they went live from New York. That was like the intro segment on Saturday Night Live. That was Kate McKinnon playing Lara Logan, who I guess is taking a lot of criticism, but it's 60 Minutes and CBS are the ones who really deserve the criticism, and I don't think their apology went far enough. And one part of it that is most disturbing is they were publishing a book by this con man guy, and of course they stopped the publishing, but they had this whole financial incentive, and that's what made it, you know, all the more scandalous that they went ahead with this. But anyway, I've been saying for a long time I don't think that there's any real scandal. I mean, there's definitely a tragedy or something to look into, but in terms of there being some cover-up or real problem in the Obama administration that is exposed by what happened on September 11th, what was it, 2012 in Benghazi, Libya, I don't really see it. But anyway, I thought I would show those couple clips where 60 Minutes was getting ridiculed. I have a couple more clips I want to show you. One is on the negotiations between the United States and Iran. I showed a clip last week about how the French at the last minute came in and they were the ones who stopped the deal from happening, and I didn't really go into why it was that the French did that. I showed another clip of from CNN State of the Union where Candy Crowley and Senator Lindsey Graham were kind of like dissing the French, as in like, who can believe, thank God for the French, what was Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican, who's really anti-Iran and didn't want to deal with Iran, he was saying. But anyway, over on CNN's freed Zakaria's GPS, they freed Zakaria, reported on what was some of the real possible reasons why it was that France stopped the deal with Iran, and I'm going to show you that clip here.
The French took the unusual step of breaking ranks with their Western colleagues to publicly denounce the deal. This has led some to wonder whether France's strategy was simply to demonstrate its hardline credentials to the most anti-Iranian states in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia in particular, and thus gain favor with them. France has signed a multi-billion-dollar defense deal with Riyadh in recent months. In addition, of course, distancing itself from America is a reflex action for the French, especially for a socialist president. But whatever France's motives, its concerns have some merit. They seem to center on Iran's nuclear reactor in Iraq, which is under construction and, if completed, could easily produce enough weapons-grade plutonium for 1 or 2 bombs every year. However, the deal being proposed would have stopped that process from going forward. If France's objections can be assuaged, those of some of the other opponents cannot.
Oh, yeah, and that's where they go into talking about Israel. But I just want to show that information about why it was that France opposed the deal with Iran, because I talked about that last week and never really got into the motive. So it could be that reactor, but it doesn't really make sense because the deal would have stopped that reactor, and it may have more to do with France trying to create this relationship with Saudi Arabia, which is really anti-Iran. So I have a couple more clips I want to show, and then it looks like we should have a good 10 minutes to try to get some discussion going, live discussion with my viewers. I think I have over 100 viewing right now, so that should be good. And one thing I wanted to show, there was a big news story this last week in China. They had their, what is it called, their third plenum, where the new leader could have announced big changes, and I didn't really see any coverage of that in any of these Sunday news shows, except over on Zakaria's GPS also. So I wanted to show that clip about what happened in China this last week over here.
China's new leaders held a mysterious gathering this week called the Third Plenum. In the past, historic announcements have come out of these meetings. The big headline out of this meeting was a relaxation of China's infamous or famous 3-decades-old one-child policy. Beijing also announced the end of its notorious so-called re-education through labor camps.
So yeah, that's a big story, that China's relaxing the one China policy and ending labor camps, although I put a link to more video from CNN's Zakaria, and you can see a couple China experts discuss the whole thing. And first they say the one-child policy already isn't completely enforced, that China has like an average of 1.5 children per couple or something like that, and that that getting rid of the policy may not increase their birth rate, but it has to do with the aging population in China, and that a third of their population could be over 65 by 2050, and so they're trying to, anyway, I thought that it was an important policy change, and that's something that you would think on Fox News and on the right-wing media there would be more coverage of, because they've always talked about the one-child policy, and of course abortion is one of the ways it's enforced in China. And then the labor camps, that's, you know, a big bugaboo, I guess. Bugaboo, I don't know if that's the right word, but, you know, people on the left are supposedly opposed to labor camps and that type of totalitarian government. So the relaxation of labor camps should be a big deal. I don't know why it wasn't more reported, although if you watch the analysis, one of the problems with that announcement is just because they got rid of these labor re-education camps doesn't mean that these same people, these political dissidents, might not just be locked up in regular prisons. You know, they don't need labor camps to lock people up. But one final clip I want to show, I've been talking about the 2016 presidential race in a lot of different episodes of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup, and I've shown Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and some other people who are almost definitely running for president. And over on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Jonathan Karl had an interview with Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, and I'd love to see him run for president, because I think what he's done in Wisconsin is pretty terrible, in terms of working people and unions, and so I'd like to see that Republicans try to defend that in a general election. But I want to show you a clip from Jonathan Karl's interview that makes it pretty clear that Scott Walker is going to run for president, both in terms of how he describes who the Republicans should nominate and then his inability to deny that he is running for president. Anyway, I'll show you the clip as the final clip for the roundup here.
When Walker talks about the kind of candidate Republicans should nominate in 2016, it sounds more than a little like he is talking about himself.
So describe for me the ideal Republican presidential candidate in 2016.
I think it's got to be an outsider. I think both the presidential and the vice presidential nominee should either be a former or current governor, people who've done successful things in their states, who've taken on big reforms, who are ready to move America forward.
So that rules out Marco Rubio, it rules out Ted Cruz, it rules out Rand Paul.
All good guys, but it's got to be somebody who's viewed as being exceptionally removed from Washington.
Your criteria also would rule out Paul Ryan.
Yeah, and I love Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan, if he had a fan club, I'd be the president of that.
Will you commit to the voters of Wisconsin, the citizens of Wisconsin, that you will serve out a full second term?
In my case, I've never made that commitment. I've had for any office.
So yeah, there you go. Scott Walker describes himself as the ideal candidate to run for president for Republicans in 2016, and he refuses to rule out the run. So draw your own conclusions from that. But those are the clips I want to show you on LiberalViewer Sunday live clip roundup for this week. And now I'm going to start looking over in the discussion section. It looks like we have a little over 100 people watching. And let me see if I can find some on-topic questions to answer. Oh, first, before I started, I saw Leo G ask, "Dear LV, any reason why you don't feature PBS NewsHour in your clip roundups, e.g. lack of time to watch? I've been impressed by the impartiality of their journalism." Well, I actually like PBS and the NewsHour, which I watch when I have a chance, and it is mostly lack of time. Also, a couple other shows from PBS I like to watch, the McLaughlin Group, and Gwen Ifill has the Washington Week program. Those are both really good, but those are like completely pundit shows, and even though I had kind of a higher percentage of pundits on this week's show, I generally like to stick to newsmakers, like Congressman Nancy Pelosi, and people who are actually office holders and other newsmakers. And then also reporters reporting on things that I haven't heard. I'll show those, like Jonathan Karl's reports or other. And I try to stay away from the pundits, although I did show some Ezra Klein and other pundits. Seemed like there weren't as many newsmakers on the shows this week. But anyway, to answer that question, I do like PBS, and I do think they're a good news source, but I am already kind of pressed for time getting everything into the clip roundup that I get in there. So I think that's more why I haven't gone to PBS, and they're actually much better than the corporate media, so I don't know, maybe I should look in there. But let's see, Jan Itor says, "Iran, dang, haven't been watching Colbert and Daily Show lately, so haven't been as up to date. Still watching the Young Turks though, so I'll see myself to try and keep it." Yeah, well, I don't know, maybe I should read the I guess the corporate media, actually, I get a lot of criticism of watching the corporate media as a way to learn about these things, but I think in some, they're better than watching the Daily Show and the Colbert Report, or even the Young Turks, although the Young Turks give a good perspective, although I think it's in some ways a skewed perspective on it. I'm not a fan of the Young Turks for unbiased, completely factual reports. I think they have a point of view. I tend to agree with their point of view, but I recognize they have it. And I think in the corporate media, like I was saying, if you watch the newsmakers themselves and not the pundits so much, you get to see like the raw data. You get to see what it is they're saying directly to the media, and they get questioned. Some of the hosts on these shows do a better job than others, but they hopefully you get a little beyond the talking points and you get a little bit of cross-examination and let's see. But anyway, that's kind of a long answer to a question. Oh, Jan Etor says best LV clip ever. I'm not sure what clip that was, so I can't really. Oh, NO8549 says, is Maher anti-vegan? I don't think so. I think he was just coming. I mean, I know Bill Maher's at least a vegetarian, so he can't be anti-vegan. I think he was just trying to come up with some creative adjective to criticize President Clinton, or former President Clinton, with there. I don't know why I said he opened his big vegan mouth there, but let me see. I'm going to take a few more questions here from the discussion section. I can comment now, says X-Rubber Bandits. Yes, you can comment now. Oh, I see you're kind of discussing with each other there, so let me see. Talking about Russia Today, and let me scroll up a little more. Still Chicken Bone Genome says the Dems should have forced Obama to single payer, but how embarrassing to actually represent the common folk. Well, single payer wouldn't have passed. I think maybe they didn't. That maybe if they'd started there, they might have gotten the public option. That, I mean, I think the public option was possibly doable, but if you really count the votes, even that wasn't much of a real political possibility. So I don't really, and excuse me, I have to do a little Marco Rubio. My mouth was getting a little dry, but my point there is, I don't think much better than the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare, much better than that could have been passed. I mean, it just squeaked by. I remember all those votes. There was the death of Ted Kennedy, and Senator Brown then being elected in his place, and they barely squeaked it by putting the Senate bill through the House without any changes, and I don't think it could have been any more to the left than it was and actually passed the Congress, at least the way it works. So yeah, I don't really agree with that. I don't think they could have gotten single payer. Maybe if they started there was a chance to get the public option in, but I think there just wouldn't have been the votes, even though, as much as I wish there was at least a public option, it wouldn't have happened any more to the left than it was, I think. I mean, that's just the truth. If you count the votes, there are a couple of those, I guess Republicans have their rhinos, the Republicans in name only. Well, was it Ben Nelson, or I can't remember who it was, who were like the most centrist Democrats, the most in the pocket of the insurance companies, who just wouldn't have voted for anything that didn't really help the insurance companies get more people in exchange for not being able to discriminate against people who are sick and had pre-existing conditions. So that was like the sweet spot. That was the only way to get it passed. At least that's my opinion. Anyway, let me see if I can find one or two more. Oh, Agent Dale Chomsky says 60 Minutes done got punked, and I lol. So yeah, that's true. I like that Saturday Night Live 60 Minutes Rob Ford thing. That was pretty funny, I thought. See if I can find one or two more. Krasnaya Armada says, Jesus, SNL dry as hell. I'm not sure which clip that was supposed to be, but was the 60 Minutes thing dry as hell? No, it doesn't seem that way to me, but NO8549 says Republicans want to hold up lots of nominations until Benghazi witnesses can testify, but who are these people? Well, that was supposedly what Lindsey Graham was going to do, and he never really apologized for, depending on the 60 Minutes piece, as why he was going to hold up all these nominations. And he did let a couple nominations go by, but I don't know if Lindsey Graham, is running for re-election, and he's trying to stop getting challenged from the right, so he's trying to appear as right-wing as possible, and that's really what's behind that. William Tobin says, I think Fareed Zakaria is the last good reporter on CNN. Well, I don't know, there are some good reporters on CNN, but Fareed Zakaria does have some interesting insights, so that's why I was glad to show clips from him. It's a little under an hour, but I have fewer clips to show this week. Like I said, it seemed like there were fewer newsmakers on this week. I don't know. I think I heard that the Republicans their strategy this week was to get out of the way while Obamacare was failing. So maybe that's why there weren't so many people from the right on the Sunday shows attacking Obamacare this week. But anyway, I wanted to show you all those clips, and I appreciate the people who showed up to comment. It looks like it was been around 100 the whole time, so thanks for joining me. For those people in the United States, it's the end of your Sunday, so enjoy the rest of your weekend. And for my viewers in Europe or wherever it is that your part of the earth is, facing the sun or not facing the sun or somewhere in between, enjoy the rest of the weekend or enjoy the beginning of your week. I appreciate all of you who posted questions, and I'll see you next Sunday for Liberal Viewers Sunday Live Clip Roundup at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and see you around the internet.